Hi, I'm the Lockpicking Cuber. I've had various requests to make videos on my cubing collection, and rather than bore you with every single puzzle in the collection, I thought what I'd do is pick out my 10 favorites. And these are favorites based on how they make me feel, the emotional attachment and nostalgia value they have in many cases. It's not really so much about how hard they are to solve or how complex they are, although that does factor into some of them. All 10 of my favorite puzzles are here somewhere in this shot. Can you guess which ones they're going to be? Well, let's see. Okay, so first at number 10, this is the Scube Ultimate. It came from an online store called puzzle.co.uk, which I don't think is operating anymore. I used to buy quite a lot of puzzles from them. Anyway, this one was a birthday present from my sister in 2013, at a time when I still knew basically nothing about cubing. I'd never even heard of a Scube at this point, and certainly had no idea how to solve one. So I ended up inadvertently learning how to solve this puzzle, the Scube, by learning how to solve a slightly harder version, which was this one, the Scube Ultimate. So this is the regular Scube, and this one is a dodecahedral shape mod of the Scube. So in other words, they've taken this puzzle and they've mapped it onto a 12-sided shape, dodecahedron. It solves identically, except that these are the centerpieces with 4 stickers on them, whereas the Scube has single sticker centerpieces. So obviously these have orientation that needs to be fixed in solving the puzzle. Number 9, Eitan Star. This is an icosahedral puzzle designed by an amazing puzzle designer named Eitan Scher. And although he later designed an even more ambitious version of this puzzle called Eitan's Nebula, which I don't have, I still think Eitan's Star is the most beautiful and iconic of his puzzles. So show you how it turns there. I heard about this puzzle long before it came out commercially, and by the time it came out, it was one of the most exciting new puzzles in a long while. I like to show this side of the puzzle because that's the half I've solved, but if you look over at the back, well, yeah, you can see I've still got some way to go. It is kind of stiff to turn, as you can see, but once you get into solving it, you get used to it, and you get more of a sense of which way you can turn things and which way is going to just break the puzzle. So there we go, that's Eitan's Star. Number 8, these are known as bubbleoids. The name, I guess, is a combination of bubble because of these sort of curvy patterns, and cuboid, which describes the overall shape of both of them. So this one is a 5x5x4, and this one is a 4x4x5 version of the puzzle. These were another pair that I was very excited about when they came out. They're actually not that difficult to solve, but as released, they had this problem, which was that these pieces would just pop out really easily. It turned out it was fairly easy to fix this by just tightening up the screws that hold the puzzles together, but without doing that, it was pretty close to impossible actually to solve these because they would just fall apart as you were trying to solve them. Anyway, once I'd got them and I'd tightened them up, it turned out they were actually a real joy to solve. If you get used to the turning of them, which again, it's kind of stiff, not super hard. Once you've figured out a couple of relatively simple algorithms, which you can figure out actually quite intuitively, then they, for me, I don't know, they just never get boring. They're always fun to solve. At number 7, we have another Scube variant, this one designed by Tony Fisher, the amazing puzzle designer. These are Scube Extremes, which come in a 6-color version, this one, and a 12-color version, which is this one. The 12-color version is just slightly harder, but really they both solve exactly like Scubes. When these came out, I don't know, I just had to have them, mostly because of how cool they look in spite of these ridiculously garish colors. Like the Scube Ultimate, these use ball bearings, which you can probably hear as I turn it. And this compares with magnets, which they use in modern day Scubes, which are way better for speed solving, for sure. But there's just something so satisfying about the way those ball bearings click into place, telling you you've got the move made. I really love that. Number 6, we have these kind of rather rough looking, pretty bog standard Rubik's Cubes. So why are they even in this list? Well, they're here for the same reason. They're both special to me because they were the cubes I used in official cubing competitions. So this one was the first, the Dian Zhanqi, which I used in my first competition in 2013. By today's standards, it's honestly pretty terrible, but actually at the time it was basically the best cube you could get. And in 2014, I actually switched to the smaller version. This was the Dian Jianqi, and this was the Dian Jianqi Mini 50mm version. And I guess it made sense to switch to it for one-handed solving because it's easier to get your fingers around it, but for some reason that I don't understand, I also switched to it for all my other official solves. So these have a lot of historical and sentimental value to me in spite of them looking so shabby. All right, for number 5, another shabby looking Rubik's Cube. What am I doing? Okay, for this one we have to jump forward a few years. This is a particularly special cube to me in spite of how ugly it is. First of all, it's a force cube, and I should explain what that means. Up until 2016, you weren't allowed to use stickerless cubes like this, where you have colored plastic instead of stickers on them. And you couldn't use those in official WCA competitions. You had to use cubes like this one, which have stickers put on them. And then in 2016, the WCA, the World Cube Association, changed its rules so that you were allowed to use these stickerless cubes. But before that, there were people who felt somehow that these stickerless cubes moved more smoothly and they could, use them more quickly. And so to kind of get around that rule, what they would do is they would take 6 stickerless cubes, take them completely to pieces, and then put them back together again, such that each cube, instead of having 6 colors, had just 1 color. So this was my yellow force cube. Here's my orange force cube. This is my red force cube. I also made green, blue, and white, but I can't find those at the moment. But anyway, this was the yellow version of the force cube. And this was the only time that I ever made force cubes. I did it with my kids, and I didn't do it to get around any regulations. I just did it because I thought it would be fun. And then, if you fast forward to 2018 at the European Championships, I was using this cube when I broke the UK national record for solving a Rubik's Cube in the fewest number of moves, which was 20. I only held that record for a few months, and now there are 2 UK cubers with sub-20 solutions, Robert Yao, who has a 19, and Harry Savage with the amazing current UK record of 17 moves. Anyway, even though I only had that record for a few months, you can probably understand why the cube that got me the record is so special to me. And if you're a cuber who does any fewest move solving, you'll understand perhaps why I still have these stickers on there. Number 5 is another shape mod. It doesn't look like it, but this beautiful silvery puzzle is actually the same puzzle in terms of how you solve it as this. So this is a Megaminx, the first dodecahedral twisty puzzle, and this is called a Hexaminx, which is an almost cube-shaped version of the Megaminx. I say almost cube-shaped because it has this kind of curve to it, which you can see on some puzzles, and it's known as pillowing. Anyway, this one was another birthday present from my mother-in-law, who I know watches my channel, so big thanks to her for the amazing gift. I love this one because it is so beautiful, but also because it turned out to be easier to solve and much more fun than I expected it to be. To be honest, I've never really enjoyed solving the Megaminx. I find it very repetitive and it just gets a bit boring. Solving this puzzle, somehow, it's challenging for sure, but not so challenging that you just can never solve it. It's not one of those puzzles that just sits on my shelf staring at me knowing I'll never solve it. And it has the names of 2 legendary puzzle designers, Tony Fisher, who we saw earlier in Tripoom, and it comes in various colors, but for me, the silver one is the most amazing. And of course, you can do these crazy looking turns and get it into all kinds of amazing looking shapes. So yeah, it really earns its place on this list, in my view. Number 4. It should be pretty obvious why this one's on the list. It just looks incredible. I got this from a guy from South America called Eduardo Daniel Mendoza Gomez, who uses the name EdCubes on Instagram and other places, and he handcrafts these puzzles out of regular Rubik's Cubes. You can still see the piece there from a regular Rubik's Cube. In case you haven't guessed, this is basically just a regular 3x3 Rubik's Cube that he has modified, added extra extensions onto to turn it into this incredible looking skull shape. It comes with this lower jaw, which is actually not part of the puzzle, and this really cool little stand to display it on. I've solved it once, but I don't really tend to play with it because I don't want to mess with it. It's just a piece of art, really, that sits in my collection and looks, well, slightly terrifying and kind of extraordinary. I love it. Number 3, this is the Dian version of the Wheels of Wisdom puzzle. I remember seeing this on somebody's desk in an office when I was visiting and thinking, I have got to have that puzzle. And when I finally found out what it was called, the Wheels of Wisdom, and so I was able to get hold of one. I was not at all disappointed. I've had this for a number of years now, and I've solved it many times, and sadly it's missing one or two stickers. If you can see them, yeah, there's one missing there, for example. But it's still one of the most enjoyable puzzles to solve, combined with it just being kind of amazing to look at, I think. Number 2. I've had to pull the camera back a bit for this one. Okay, and again, I'm cheating. This is actually 3 puzzles, not 1. Okay, so this is the Tut Minx, named after its inventor, Lee Tut, who designed it, I think, in 2005. I got this one early in 2014, and I've solved it exactly once. It took me about a year. It has 32 faces. Looks like it should solve the same way as a Mega Minx, but because some of the faces are pentagons and some of them are hexagons, it actually gets a little tricky, particularly as you get towards the final layer. I actually prefer this one. This is another version of the Tut Minx, known as the Very Puzzle Lovebird, because it has these lovely little lovebird shapes on the pieces. I like these kind of fire or water patterns on there as well. It solves almost exactly the same as the regular Tut Minx, except you don't have the coloured centres. So yeah, it's a little bit easier to solve. But again, this is in the list more for its beauty than for its solve, although it is also very good fun to solve. Right, now I have to come on to this amazing beast. So easily, this is the largest puzzle in my collection. It's known as the Ray Minx, after its designer Ray Brunner. It's also called a Giga Tut Minx, which is by analogy with the Giga Minx, which is the bigger version of the Mega Minx. I think I could probably solve it. I never have. I've scrambled it and I've done, what have I done, like one face here. But I'm just so daunted by the prospect of the hours and hours it's going to take to solve it, that I've basically just left it like this for the last couple of years. Like many of these kinds of puzzles, it came unstickered, so I had to sticker it myself, which was in itself a pretty large job. So yeah, I really should put in the time one day to solving it. But on the other hand, doesn't it look incredible in this scrambled state? And it's easy to forget just how big. Let's put this against a regular Rubik's Cube. So if you look at the Tut Minx is pretty big compared with the Rubik's Cube, right? But then look how the Tut Minx is just a baby compared to the Ray Minx. And there's a Rubik's Cube against the Ray Minx for scale as well. So yeah, it's a beast. It's an amazing beast. It's, you know, kind of difficult to solve, but not massively harder than these guys, and those are not impossible to solve. They are definitely tricky. So yeah, it's a less challenging puzzle than you might think based on the size, but obviously it is also not going to be an easy puzzle to solve. Finally, my favorite puzzle. How can it be this one? I can hear you asking. It's so small and simple. It's just a 2x2, right? Haha, well no. This is the Pocket Cube, designed by a guy called Justin Eplert. It causes a bit of confusion that it's called the Pocket Cube, because when the regular 2x2 Rubik's Cube came out in the 1980s, that was also called the Pocket Cube. So I tend to think of this as Justin's Pocket Cube. Anyway, this is actually the cube that got me into puzzle collecting in the first place. I'd started watching a YouTuber called Marty Wolfman, who sadly stopped publishing cubing videos a few years back. And he unboxed one of these and solved it. And although at that time I guess I had a Rubik's Cube or two and probably a 4x4, I didn't really have any variant puzzles. And when I saw Marty's video on this one, yeah, I had to have it. I think it looks incredible, and it still reminds me of the days when a puzzle could seem so mysterious and exciting to me. And on top of that, it moves in this really bizarre way. So let me show you how this scrambles. You're sort of blocked in various directions at various points, and you have to try and find ways that you can turn it. Let me see where we're going here. There we go. So then you can separate out these gold pieces from each other and separate them again. It gets into all kinds of weird shapes. Solving it, honestly, isn't actually that difficult. I mean, it's tricky, but it's not crazy difficult. In fact, just scrambling it, as you just saw, was kind of tricky in the first place. But it feels nice in the hand. It's satisfyingly heavy, but it's not that amazing a puzzle to solve. It comes in other colors, including, in my opinion, a really ugly 4-color version. But for me, this is easily the most attractive variant and probably the most attractive cube that I've ever bought. So why is it number one on my list? Well, it's number one because really, apart from Rubik's Cubes in the 1980s, this was the first puzzle that I ever really got excited about. And it's a really important part of the story of how I got into collecting and solving twisty puzzles of all kinds. All right, I cheated, but I mean, you know, numbers go down to zero, right? So this is the 0th puzzle in my collection, the one that I like even more than my favorite one, perhaps. It's not all of these, it's just one of them. These are all cuboid puzzles. You saw a couple of cuboids earlier, which were the bubbleoids, but these are all kind of regular standard cuboids. So they're kind of like normal 3x3 Rubik's Cubes, except that they have differing numbers of pieces on each layer. I've got loads more cuboids. These are just a few that I picked out from my collection. One of the fun things about cuboids is that they can do weird shape-changing stuff, like you can see with this one. And they all involve different kinds of strategies and approaches, but the one that is my favorite by far is this one. This is the 4x4x6, and you can probably see from the state of the stickers that I've solved this puzzle a lot of times. I really have, it's fun. I'll just briefly mention this one. This is pretty special because I think it's the only one of its kind ever in the world. This is a supercube version of the 4x4x6. So what that means is it's a 4x4x6, it's the same size and shape and everything about it is the same to solve it, except that it has these colors on the stickers which show you what color needs to go on the other side. So in the case of an edge, it doesn't actually make any difference to solving it, but in terms of the centers, it makes a big difference. So actually, although this is sort of notionally solved, it isn't yet solved properly because I haven't got all of these center pieces in exactly the right places. So that just adds an extra level of challenge to it. But again, that's not the one I wanted to talk about. This is the one. So this is the 4x4x6, and this was the first cuboid I ever bought. It's Tom Z's 4x4x6. I remember seeing Crazy Bad Cuber, who was a very big cuber back in the day, and he did a video on this puzzle, which is what got me interested in it. And then I got hold of it, and I spent a while learning all of the various algorithms and strategies and approaches, and eventually I got to the point where I could solve it pretty comfortably. Now, one of the reasons that I like this puzzle so much is because what you can do when you scramble it. So you can scramble it in a fairly sort of standard way, just muddling up the colors, but then you can also do these sorts of turns like a 2x2 effectively, and then you can do it like a 3x3, and you can get it into all kinds of really weird and wonderful shapes. And although it looks kind of nightmarish, cuboids always end up looking kind of nightmarish when you really scramble them up. This one's, yeah, it's not the hardest of the cuboids. It's not the easiest either, but it's sort of in the middle of the range. There are ones like the 2x4x6, which I just have never been able to solve. I'd call that one the hardest that I've ever had anyway. And in fact, this 3x4x5, that's really difficult as well. But this 4x4x6 takes me, I don't know, 20 minutes, something like that, to solve it. And the algorithms and the strategies that you use to solve it are, you know, pretty much the standard ones across cuboid puzzles. So yeah, this is probably my favorite puzzle just to sit down and solve. If I'm, I don't know, going on a long train journey perhaps, or I'm watching a movie that I don't want to pay too much attention to, then I might just fiddle with this for fun. It's a really great puzzle to solve. Perhaps one day I'll do a time-lapse solve of it for you to see, but anyway, there we go. That's my 0th favorite puzzle. So yeah, I hope you've enjoyed watching me go through my 10 or 11 or I don't know 20-ish favorite twisty puzzles. I've enjoyed showing them to you. If you have enjoyed watching this and you have ideas for other kinds of videos I could make, then please stick some comments below and let me know. And if you haven't already, then please do subscribe so that you don't miss out when I make those videos that you suggest. As always, thanks so much for watching. I'll see you on the next video. Bye.